we've all been programmed up with throughout the whole of our lives while we've been asleep, unconscious, unaware, with all the information this world and the systems in it are feeding into our heads. While you're in this information consumption mode, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, because you start to see that, oh, I bought this and that, I thought this might have been true. You figured out for yourself that it wasn't true. Yet the people I was taking this in from are also talking about truth. Oh, so it starts to reveal to you. People are just regurgitating things that they have heard that are just perpetuation of misinformation, disinformation, lies, half-truths, quote-unquote being awake, but they're false. The next stage of learning, understanding, comprehension, growth, development, awareness, all that stuff begins to open up. And then you kind of step into the next step, the next phase, the next stage of you as a human being, learning, growing, evolving, becoming more aware, more conscious, more knowledgeable, more all of those other things, all of the things that are involved in this process. Taking the red pill wakes you up to the nightmare. And that is a harsh truth that those who haven't yet taken the red pill will be in denial of up until the point in which they do. And all of the things that whatever controls this world and this realm have put forth to ensure that we would, in as much as it could ensure, never find the actual truth, the actual answers that we're looking for about what's truly going on here. The powers that be on this planet, well, they don't want you to wake up. They want you to stay sleeping, unconscious, unaware, ignorant, developmentally stifled in every conceivable way that they can affect that, because then you're far more easy to control. Then, if you have kids, you will likely indoctrinate them with your mindset, ideologies, belief systems, and all that stuff, and you will eventually perpetuate what's in you that makes you so easy to control upon your children. And it's like the blind leading the blind. And since we're a species that we have to indoctrinate our young, think about that. I mean, this stuff really gets deep. When you look at the species that we are and realize that our young require indoctrination, because their minds are in the theta state, their minds are like sponges, they're programmable, they're taking in everything, it's all going into the subconscious minds, it's of the children, it's forming the foundation of them, their belief systems, their perceptions, ideological things like religious ideology, all this stuff. This is how we were made to be wired up. And this was under the intention, I would guess, but maybe not. Maybe there was a nefarious intention. This was all designed and made it so that the parent could raise and teach the child. The sad thing about that is, though, if you have ignorant parents, then they're just going to raise and teach the child the same ignorant stuff that has kept them in the darkness of ignorance, or the depths of ignorance, and that's just how it continues to perpetuate itself. How do I say what I'm trying? There's just so much to freaking say about this stuff. So, when we, as a species that are made and designed and built that way, and for anybody that's a bit learned, a little aware and awake, and you understand a little bit about the brain, the alpha, beta, theta, gamma, delta states of the brain, and what that means and how that works for us and what they can do to us, or what can be done to us, or what we can do in these states, it begins to make sense. The Jesuits said, give me a child till it's 7 years old and I'll give you the man, because they understood that the 7-year period is where we are the most programmable at that point. So that said, you look at how the world seeks to program the mind of the developing child, or to program the adult that is unaware and ignorant, hasn't been taught yet, hasn't been exposed to bigger truths yet, and then that adult has kids, and then begins to indoctrinate its child the way it was supposed to be, with the shit that got put into the ignorant adult's head by the forces upon this earth that seek to program your mind with what they want you to believe. And then the cycle begins to perpetuate itself, where the blind, meaning the person who's ignorant, been programmed by the fucking world and the powers that be that want you to have their version of reality plugged into your fucking head, the blind then have offspring begin to lead the blind. And the cycle continues to perpetuate, and ignorance abounds upon this earth. And if it hasn't become abundantly clear to people yet, the people that have the vast majority of the knowledge that gives humans power, number one, are on the fucking dark side. Just happens to be the dynamic down here. Doesn't mean that the knowledge that they possess automatically leads one to the dark side, but who knows? They could have gotten all their knowledge and ability to do what they've done from something on the dark side, and who knows? For whatever reason, with the knowledge that they have about the human species, they have been doing all that they freaking can to destroy the minds of the developing child, whether it's them doing it directly or them doing it to parents who will ultimately do it to their children. They have sought to inject perversions into our psychologies, our societies, which will ultimately likely get into our psychology in a lot of ways, in a lot of respects, for a lot of people. They've done so much to pervert the very environment in which we live by perverting all of our societies in all the ways that they have, with porn, hypersexualization, the idea of, just greed and commoditizing everything, consumerism, and just all the freaking toxic ideas and ideologies, if you will, that have bred the toxic mindset, the narcissistic, consumerist, look at me, how pretty I am, that kind of stuff, and has bred so much of the shit that we see going on this planet. How do you think that was a natural manifestation of the direction that humans were going? Or could there not have been, as Edward Bernays explains in his book Propaganda early on, could it not be those who mold, shape, and form through their own efforts the societies that we live in that ultimately are a large influencer in the minds of the people who walk among the fucking society as adults and the children who are growing up in that society? Because there are things for the minds of the children and there are things for the minds of the adults. All of these things have been put together for us by them. Therefore, these things contain their ideologies, their ideas, their mindsets, the things that through these vehicles that they control, that are largely, to us, perceived as entertainment, they can begin to then influence and craft and mold our perceptions, our beliefs, in all the ways that they want. So as we, if any of us, get to the point where we have that catalyst moment and start waking up, we have to begin to break through all of the goddamn beliefs that we have that are rooted in the things that they have given and crafted for us, or given to us and crafted as our belief system, or helped to craft our belief systems by way of all this stuff they're getting into our fucking heads, while they know we're ignorant, don't have a foundation of knowledge to truly know. We think they know and we believe them because, well, I don't know why we believe them, because they come off as some authoritative person, a source, or those who seem to know. And, it's amazing what wicked people can do and are doing to those of us in ignorance and leading them like the Pied Piper to their demise. Ignorance is the Achilles heel of the human species. As it's even said in the Christian Bible, Jesus supposedly said, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." Well, what the hell's a dictionary definition of ignorance? Lack of knowledge. In its most simplistic form, ignorance is lack of fucking knowledge. Jesus Christ himself was saying, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." What is perishing? It's dying. It's being enslaved. It's all those types of things because of lack of knowledge. He was saying the Achilles heel of the human species is our ignorance. So, as we begin to wake up, we got to go through this goddamn minefield of our belief systems, all the while taking in information. Well, let me rephrase that. We go through our belief systems, the field of our belief systems. It's a metaphor, an analogy. Try and follow me. Hopefully it'll make sense. And then the more information we take in, all of a sudden we find that these belief systems that we have turns out to be minefield for us, because all of a sudden this belief system blows up right there next to us, and it's damaging to us because it's no longer there. It's been shattered to pieces, and now I got to replace that belief system with something else. Well, hey, now I'm older, wiser, and more mature and more aware than I was when that fucking belief system that just blew up next to me was put there. So now I have to take a look at the world and how the fuck it actually works and replace that belief system that's all gone now with something else. And this process goes on. It's an analogy. It's a metaphor, but I think you get the point. There is nothing fun about it, because waking up does not wake you up to, the world is rainbows and fairy dust, cotton balls and bunny rabbits, and some quote-unquote loving God that's sitting there waiting for us to all be with it, and we're all just going to frolic and hop around and be happy and just blissed out and golden this and up in heaven and all that fucking ridiculous shit that is like stories that you tell a child to get it interested in this special place that you get to go if you're good. And you start looking at the whole goddamn indoctrination process of religion and this stuff for the minds of kids, and it's like, holy shit, man. When I aligned with the awareness of, number one, as a species that we are, there's a very specific developmental process that we must go through that consists of balanced families, father, mother. And when I started to look at the developmental process, the fragility of the human child, and how that developmental process needs to be managed by parents who realize that now life for them is no longer about everything about them. It's about, hey, I got to cultivate my kid. When you start looking at how all this was set up, how it works, that there's people who know this that are wicked as fuck and have done everything they could and are still doing it to destroy this process so that the ultimate end result, the finished product of the grown, mature adult, if you will, is, well, look at the world around you and the fucking people in it, and it should basically say everything that I haven't just said. It speaks for itself. You know, and when you step away from what I've said even more, and you start realizing all of this shit points to the fact that there is an enemy upon this earth that is an enemy of mankind. That starts to fucking challenge people's paradigms, challenge people's belief systems. And then because the enemy that is here has been programming the minds of people to never talk about them, to have this like triggered pre-triggered response, whatever, however you say it, to mentioning anything about the and all that stuff. I've been told things across the board by people that I know when I try to talk to them about, and I don't spit venom when I have these conversations because, well, I don't. Doing a monologue on a social media platform where there's nobody standing around me is one thing. But when I realize that I'm talking to people that have various levels of knowledge and psychological fragility, you know, you've got to be careful in your delivery. You've got to poke and prod at what they know about this stuff and see what you can deduce about their understanding before you start really hitting them with some of the harder truths about this stuff that they may not know. But the strange thing is the enemy's here. They infiltrated everything, have done everything they've done, yet they've also programmed the minds of the population so that when you start pointing out that there's an enemy and then who the fucking enemy is, all of a sudden you bring people very quickly up to the barrier of their belief systems, and strangely enough, in the condition that most adults are in now, a substantial fucking portion of them, you bring them to this subject matter of, for instance, they have very fucking emotionally driven responses, and they become wholly unaware of how little they actually know about who and what Jews are, their history, what they've done, and they're functioning under beliefs. And I've said it before, beliefs can be, and to a large degree for a lot of us, are not rooted in reality. So these people are having these emotional responses to beliefs about that have been programmed into their heads through school systems and our societies. They don't understand who is in control of that. That's been molding the information to form these fucking belief systems. And it's just like, holy fucking shit. Something has thought this shit through on levels that they are awe-inspiring. Whoever did this, really, I mean, diabolical genius of how it seems to have every basis covered to the point where, as the enemy of mankind that it is, it's done something to prevent mankind from being able to see it for what it is, number one, and then start talking about it to those who are unaware of it and trying to point out what they're actually objectively doing. Watch the emotional responses, watch the anger, watch the people have these triggered responses because, God forbid, you talk about it. They don't have the presence of mind to be aware of, well, anything relevant to it. Again, one of the more painful processes that people will go through to realize how deceived they have been. And quite frankly, if it's not abundantly clear to any of you out there that, for instance, follow my stuff, there's an awful lot of people who don't want to go anywhere near that goddamn subject matter because they're controlled. They're brainwashed. They're mind-controlled. They're not thinking for themselves. They haven't taken the time to take in the information that would give them a foundation of knowledge, that would give them the clarity or the eyes to see relevant to this subject matter, which ultimately, at its root, is we have an enemy of mankind among us, and most people don't have the eyes to fucking see that, let alone identify who and what the fuck it actually is. It's just like, whose nightmare did I wake up into? And why am I here? How the fuck did I wind up in somebody's nightmare where I have the ability, for instance, just like my average lowly ass, whatever, can see this for what the fuck it is because, well, I've spent 17 years putting in the fucking time to obtain the knowledge that gives me the eyes to fucking see this. But then when you want to deliver it to people who don't have that fucking information, they haven't taken the time, not because they won't, they're not as far along in the process as you are. And when they want to refuse, it's just like, fuck, it's like, wait a minute, they're not your enemy, they're awakening, they're fucking, one of us, if you will, they're just way back there in that process, beginning earlier on, and they have yet to take in all the information between where they are and where you are that helps you to understand what the fuck it is that you do, say what you say, trying to communicate to them what you do. But here's the thing, from the place in which I am or any of you are, trying to communicate down the steps of the awakening ladder, if you will, to those who haven't taken in the information contained between where you are to where they are, they're not going to be able to accept, understand in most cases. And it's not a slight to them. Again, those people who will reject what you're telling them in many cases, if they're in the genre of, or the umbrella of, they're on the awakening journey. They're somewhere along. They're maybe earlier on in the process, the young awakeners, if you will, but they're on their way. Yeah, it's hard to not, sometimes it can be real hard to not get frustrated with these people and just, because it's like, wait a minute, we're all on this awakening journey. I'm a little further ahead of you. I'm trying to drop some shit on you so you can see some shit. So maybe the rest of the journey for you until you get here won't be quite so challenging. But hey, who am I to impose something on your awakening process, your journey of figuring shit out for yourself? And it's just this weird goddamn dynamic that whatever it is that's doing this, and I say it's whatever they're working for, knows this about the human being, so they've spent the time using the mechanisms of media and indoctrination to program the mind of the masses relevant to them, with the us and poor us, and we've been the wandering nomadic tribe, never had a home, and all the things that have been programmed into people's minds, so that At a point in which any of us started to wake up and start point the finger, started to realize we have an enemy among us. That enemy means you harm if you're black, white, green, purple, red, brown, doesn't matter what color of the rainbow you are or any of that stuff. They're the enemy of mankind. They knew this ahead of time and then programmed the society so that when any of us who woke the fuck up to this started pointing this out, we would then be rejected by those people who didn't know because, hey, they have belief systems. Their egos are hanging on to what they believe. You see how all this fucking links together? It's